Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in just 30 seconds, maybe. There's plenty of seats down here in the front, so don't be shy. Don't be shy. I hear this room is brand spanking new. It's never been used. And I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Kevin Ackerman with 66. So this is the Kevin Ackerman room from now on. Is that okay? All right, Google gave me the approval. That's what we're going to do. We're going to put my name on it. So let's get started. I'm going to be your host today. We're 66 Degrees. We're helping host this along with our Google friends, and we have a couple of distinguished people that I'm going to introduce here in a second. But why don't we just do a couple house cleaning things? We're going to start with a Looker overview. So Chris is going to do that. Then we're going to transition over to Emily with Wayfair, who's going to, oh, that's okay. Yeah, please. Yeah. Woo. Woohoo! She's got a great presentation, by the way. It's going to be really good. Then we're going to take a little break. And what we're going to do is ask everybody to leave 10 minutes, go refresh your drinks or whatever. We're going to set up a fireside chat up here. Then we're going to take Q&A. You'll notice there is a mic here in the center of the room. When we get there, we'll remind you again. But if you feel like your voice needs a little help, please come up and use the mic. Otherwise, I think it's a pretty small room. We should be okay. And then afterwards, we'll continue with drinks in the lobby. And it's up to you how long you want to stay. I think we have till 8. Again, I just went through everybody's name, but here's our pictures. And again, I'm just really, really excited about the folks that are going to be here presenting to you today. We have absolutely amazing content to share about Looker. Before I pass it over to Chris, I just wanted to spend 30 seconds on letting you know who 66 is. It's funny, whenever I have a conversation about 66 and I let people know who I work for, they go, what is 66? Well, what is that? So if you don't know, 66 degrees, 33 plus to 33 negative is where clouds are created. And 66 degrees, we help our clients on that cloud journey. We're actually really good at it. We have scale as well as impeccable technology. And we're very good at mitigating risk around getting projects to completion. I think we've got a number here of 1,000 projects, but we probably have more. We're really good with aligning with our partner, Google, and making sure that when we deliver those projects, they're successful, not only for the IT team, but for the business and the outcomes. And with that, Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Cool, thank you very much. All right. Snaps. Thanks everyone for coming. It's really been a long journey for this series in general. From when we started past in 2022 in November to what we have now. It's been one heck of a journey. This all wouldn't be possible without all of you here. So I just want to make sure that we can all just give ourselves a round of applause. To those at home watching at the live stream, and to the future people who are going to see the recording of this. But if there's 3 things that I want you to take away from this presentation, it really is Looker plus embedded analytics and data monetization equals business value and profitability. So in the age of information, data is the lifeblood of successful type of organizations. So the ability to access and understand and utilize data effectively can determine the fate of a company in today's competitive landscape. So that's where Looker really comes into play. So it's a powerful data analytics platform that empowers businesses to make data-driven decisions with ease. But we're not just here to really talk about Looker alone. We're here to envision a future where Looker, combined with embedded analytics and data monetization, propels businesses to new heights of success. And so now imagine a scenario where Looker provides powerful analytical capabilities and are embedded not only within your organization's applications, but also within the data products and services that you have to offer. So your data becomes a valuable resource for your partners, your clients, and your stakeholders. So you enable them to make better decisions, to optimize their operations, and to gain a competitive edge in their respective type of markets. So as a result, your organization becomes a key player in the data economy and creates a sustainable and profitable business model. So how, and before we get into things, I think we should talk about kind of the wave and the evolve of business intelligence in general. So wave one, traditional BI, really started with MicroStrategy, Cognos, and some other applications. And what came of this is that they came about with a very strong governance type of layer. However, you really needed someone very technical to build out your business intelligence dashboards and your platform. And then wave two came along, products such as Tableau, which sacrificed the data governance layer and favorable to be more flexible, data visualization and dashboarding. And it's great at being able to create ad hoc dashboards and type of the visualizations. And now it comes to now. Wave three, which is AKA the BI modernization. So, which takes the governance from wave one, the visualization capabilities of wave two, marries all those things to build a data platform that provides powerful self-service for both technical and non-technical people, users, and providing the scalability, the governance, and the data-driven type of workflows and downstream actions and more. So the amalgamation of Looker, embedded analytics, and data monetization is really a recipe for immense business value and profitability for any type of organization. So by embracing this transformative approach, you can drive a data-driven culture, foster innovation, enhance customer experience, and gain a sustainable competitive edge. So on the right side, you'll see that Looker also has traditional BI in terms of schedule and alerting, but also the future of business intelligence in terms of creating custom workflows, ease with embedding with iframe, and also custom application development. So with that said, didn't want to spend too much on the slide deck and to make sure that we have enough time to actually see the platform in motion. So that is next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my computer here. Boom. All right. See if we can switch screens. All right, cool. So first I'm going to, so what we're looking at is the home page of the Looker platform. First I'm going to start out from the viewer, and that's somebody who's curating dashboards. Then I'm going to move on to a user who really wants to dig in and answer their own questions. And then finally I'm going to transition to the perspective of a technical user who's actually building the model and laying the foundation for the rest of the organization. So as I said before, this is the home page, and this is how we're accessing Looker from the browser, right? So I'm only able to see the content in any dashboards that I'm permissioned to see. Okay, so from here I can easily navigate to any dashboard that I'm permissioned to do so. Today we're going to be looking at the Business Pulse dashboard, which is a fictional business performance. So each of these tiles on this dashboard is its own independent SQL query. And as the dashboard renders, the queries are being run live on the database directly from the browser. So as I scroll down, you can see how many different types of visuals that Looker has to offer. And there are many ways to interact with curated dashboards. So for today, what I'll portray, firstly, is I'll just change some filters. Let's go from 90 to 14 days. And we'll press update, right? So with that simple change, by running that SQL query, all these individual tiles are their own SQL query, right? And so what I can do now, and with just a few clicks, I can also have the ability to drill down into my information. This is also a very powerful feature of Looker, right? So and that's because it's directly on top of the database. And I'm only permissioned, and the limitations of how granular I can get are through my permissions, right? So Looker allows me to leverage both row and column level security in order to entirely tailor the experience to my end users, right? So here I can see how granular I can get. So I can do this actually by drilling down into a visual. And for today, I'm going to go by created hour. And so here, I'm really able to see that granular type of information. This is just a visual of the table. But if I go down to the table level, I can actually see that row level information. In this case, I'm seeing my the order ID. And from here, I can do something called actions. And from actions, this is really powerful because what I can do with this is I can actually send information straight from my Looker dashboard at the row level per mission level and send that to a Slack channel or anything that can accept some an API call, right? So if I go here, I can send this to Zev, or I can send this to anyone else who's a Slack demo user in terms of the channel and so forth. Also from here, I can go to any type of dashboard that's within or related to a particular topic of my interest. So in this case, let's say I wanted to dig a bit down more into a particular brand. In this case, Alpine Swiss. If I wanted to go to an Alpine Swiss type of the analytical dashboard, I can go straight from here. And with this allows me, as you can see, this is actually passed in as a filter at the top here is Alpine Swiss. So here you can see the brand has been passed in directly as a filter, right? And one final way I can interact with this dashboard is by actually creating an alert. So if I want to know when the average sales price drops below a certain threshold, all I have to do is select the bell icon in the top right corner and create that alert. And so here, Looker really makes it easy and intuitive for me to define the threshold with a series of drop-downs and define who my alert is being sent, how it's being sent, and the frequency with which the query is being run. So because Looker is directly on top of the database, a query can be as run as every minute, which is really nice. And so this is what I've just showed you, more or less the perspective of a viewer. But I want to dig down and really show you from this perspective of a user. So this is someone who really wants to get down and get their hands dirty, would really like to ask and answer some of their own questions. So what I'm going to do now is actually going to scroll down to the most popular category. And perhaps I want to think that this visual is actually really, really interesting to me. But it might be more impactful if I swap out total sales price for total sales margin. So if I'm permissioned to do so, I can select these three dots up here and go explore from here. So now the explore environment is where queries are actually built in Looker. So on the left-hand side, we have our field picker, and each drop-down within the field picker is representative of a different table within my database. And as I open each dropdown, I can see these fields available for my analysis, right? So the Explorer environment is curated, so I'm able to leverage the logic, and custom fields are put in place by my technical team, or also so I'm limited to the fields within my permissions. So search also makes it very easy to find those fields that I need. And on the right-hand side here, you can see we have a numerical representation, and also a visual representation of my results also. So in order to edit this query, all I have to do is swap out total sales price, and I'll do that by clicking this cogwheel and pressing remove. So that's gone. And so now I'll search for total gross margin. All I have to do is click. And so without any SQL knowledge, I'm running a new query on the database directly from the browser, while leveraging the logic put in place by my technical team, which ensures accurate results. Also, by selecting the SQL tab, I'm able to get a transparency into the actual query that's being written on the back end. So this feature is very easy to permission away, but can be very useful for the right audience. This kind of really show you some changes here. So if I go to results, right, and I remove this away, my SQL code has changed. If I add this again, you can see that it's consistently writing the SQL for me as I'm adding the fields that I want to be shown. So from here, I'm going to press run. And so because everything is in the browser, collaboration is very easy. I can copy and paste the URL for this window and share it with any other licensed member of my team. Additionally, if I know that I want to run this on a regular basis, I can create a schedule. But first, if I want to do that, I actually have to save this as a look, right? So a look is basically the tiles that we saw within the dashboard. So what I can do here is actually go up here to this cogwheel. I'm going to click Save and Schedule. It actually can save this to my own personal folder. This can be my personal folder, my team's folder, and so forth. I'm going to call this Live Demo today and save this look. All right. So this is a look. This is a tile that would be put on top of a dashboard. So from here, I can actually create a schedule. Right? So Looker allows me to send the results of this query to the application of my choice. And I'm able to select the format, the results, the frequency at which being is run. And with advanced options, I'm able to define the thresholds so that the results are only sent in case that they meet a certain criteria. So you can see here, I can send it as a webhook to an S3 bucket, to Google Drive, Twilio, text messaging, Salesforce campaign. I'm also able to choose the type of format, CSV, text, and HTML, and so forth. All right, but what I really want to show you, I've kind of shown you kind of the lay of the land, but it would be nice to see this actually built from scratch, right? So what I'll do here is actually clear my results, and let's dig a little bit further into total gross margin. So what I'll do here, search for total gross margin. Right, and Looker really makes it easy to select a time frame. And so what I'll do here is create time frame for create date. Dimensions will go by month. All right, we'll run this. Due to visual best practices, first it's going to show us a line chart. But there are a lot of different visual options that we have, including table, column, bar chart, scatter plot. You can even show a map, bar gauge, donut, funnel, lots of options to choose from. Today we're actually just going to focus on a column chart. And let's say I really want to dig into the demographic a little bit deeper. I'm actually going to add another tier here. So I'm actually going to do age tier. I'm actually going to pivot this because I want to compare total gross margin and create date and age tier together. So I pivoted that data. You can see here how it's on top. And just with a single click and running, we're now displayed with columns in a group. But if I navigate the settings or edit, I can actually portray this in a stacked format. If I want to change the color of it, I can actually go to the panel here and choose a color like I think this is just a little bit more prettier. So before I dive into the perspective of a technical user who really laid the foundation for all the queries, I just want to revisit this SQL tab. So we can see here that at the back end, age tier is written a fairly long SQL statement. And I just want to draw your attention to this and really keep this in mind as we transition to the semantic layer or data definition layer, so you really have an understanding of what LookML looks like. And let's just dive right in. So you do that by clicking here, go to LookML. All right, so what you'll see here is that we're in a project called the Look event. All right, so you can think of a project as a folder to hold all the files that come together to build that semantic layer or that single source of truth. So dashboards and queries are built on top of this particular environment. We'll just accordingly, as users, make adjustments, ensuring that all analysis is based on the same metrics. Right, so the two most important files that we're going to talk about today are the views and the model file. In the views, which are located here, represent the different type of tables within your database. So each of the objects in here and will be specific to user.view. Each of the objects in here considered measures or dimensions are now representative of the fields within those tables. So they're defined using the language called LookML, which is really easy, SQL agnostic abstraction of SQL, very easy to learn and pick up. And at least like 70% of the LookML is automatically generated based on the data that already exists in your database today. And so, we're only really adding custom logic or fields in the permissioning that's specific to your organization, and that's where the customization really comes into play. So additionally, the model file, in this case, the look.model file, is where the relationships between the tables are defined, right? So join relationships are leveraged depending on the fields chosen by the end user and allow the technical team to continue building out this single source of truth without any significant limitations. So going back to the users.view file, in order to better illustrate how this works, I want to draw your attention to the age field. That's this right here, right? So we can see that the age object was automatically generated based on the data that exists in the database. So a secondary LookML object called over21 is able to reference age. You can see that here in the SQL equals reference age here, but perform a basic logical test on it. So in order to create a custom field that can then be leveraged by end users in the Explore environment. Finally, you'll remember that the age tier field that we looked at before, we're using in our analysis, the looker object type tier makes it very easy to create different buckets of the field, right? So this is just a really good example on how Looker saves us time, as no member actually had to write that long SQL statement that I showed you before. And if I wanted to edit this, I actually don't have permission to do so. What you do is click this hamburger icon here, go into developer mode, and you can start critiquing the LookML model and view files in your branch, all right? So Looker on the back end is Git-based, so all the edits that I'm making are in my branch until I commit them to the overall type of organization. So this gives us kind of a real overview of what a viewer, how a viewer would interact with Looker, how a user would interact with Looker, and how a developer would create that back end for their organization. So now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pivot to an embedded example and really show you the power of embedding and what that really looks like. Okay, so what we're looking at now is a fictional company called Atom Fashion, right? And Atom is an e-commerce marketplace targeting young adult customers with fast fashion deals. So their breakout success is largely because of the decision to put analytics at the core of their strategy, giving their merchants the best targeting tools, customer communication, and analytics. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. It's my account, not my personal email. Glad this is recorded, right? So as this is logging in, we're all a part right now of the Calvin Klein team. So we're the Calvin Klein team logging into Atom Fashion's portal, okay? So all the information on this page is being sourced from real-time queries Looker runs in the database, filtered by merchant, or served from a configurable cache. And so these queries are based on LookML written by an analyst in advance. So this means that your app developer won't need to write a single line of SQL or need to build expensive cubes. So as we tour this portal, we'll see which of the interfaces are sourced. So if I come here, so we can see that there are both iframe embedded, which you can use for very fast type of the integration, Looker's RESTful API, which is used for pixel perfect control. And Atom also monetizes premium merchant accounts. And we'll see how Looker provides that fine-grained feature access, which enables that. So let's take a look at our first embedded dashboard. In this case, we're going to look at web analytics. So Atom's engineers started with really simple embedded first, since they gave them the fastest type of implementation time, allowing them to release right away before trying to iterate further. Clicking on the source. So iframes takes data from your portal's user account as arguments to the source URL. And so these parameters control data, report, and feature access. to show you the code, you can see that the user object here, before it's being coded into the iframe URL, here our brand attribute is passed into the where clause of a query for row-level security on a single set of tables. And so we can also base that security on schemas, columns, or database connections. Going back to Web Analytics, the iframe is secure because it's either signed with a shared secret by your application or retrieved from our API and may only be used once for a limited period of time. By the way, iframe comes equipped with a front end type of the SDK for faster development. So Adam's product team got a feature request to see the top sales days. And Adam's merchants wanted to see this in a highly specialized way. So this brings us to our sales calendar. So the engineering team set out to build up a customized experience using Looker's RESTful API. And they use our server-side type of the SDK to speed their development. So if I click source here, it's worth mentioning that here, whether you're using Looker's API or iframes, Looker gives you that consistent set of capabilities to work with. So drilling to that row level is one, which is possible because Looker's in the database type of the architecture, right? So let's say we want to drill into a hotspot as Calvin Klein. Oh no. So because this is a powerful feature that's been reserved for advanced accounts, Looker gives product and engineering teams fine-grained control over what features to provide which users, and this is exactly how Adam is able to drive additional value for its high-value merchants. So let's go ahead and upgrade. We're basic users, now we're going to upgrade to advanced users. We're moving up in the world. And so now, as this loads, and if I click here, we're now really able to see that row level data, okay? And we're able to, if we're permissioned to do so, perform actions on that just like I showed you before. But the iframe and API can work in tandem to create something even more specialized. So let's take a look at the Save Reports screen. So this page uses API and iframes together. And to show you, when I click down here on the source, you can see where everything's coming from. So the list of reports comes from the API and instructs the iframe which saved report to display. And so the iframe can also allow browsing content if you'd like to do that inline. But it's an example of using the two together to produce something new, right? So going to our actually sales overview to show you another example of using the two together, showing our source here. So which uses an API call. So this dashboard uses an API call to fetch context and provide available dashboards through filters, right? So if I go through here, I can select dresses, and this is going to interact with the iframe to the right. Or if I'd like to see accessories again like before, that's also going to interact, right? So these dashboard filters can be passed into the iframe using our embedded SDK, which facilitates communication into the iframe, but also listens to the user's interactions and events broadcast out to the iframe as well. This allows developers to interact and respond to users and interactions inside the iframe. So for example, presenting a custom message or redirecting the user to another place or application. So if I click here on total sales price, for example, having drilled down here on the dashboard, I can see and have intercepted this event and done something custom with this again. Just like we saw before, we have this thing called Actions, very powerful tool, being able to send directly from a Looker dashboard to Slack channel, GChat, any type of application that can accept an API call. Additionally, if I wanted to go to a website, Facebook, being able to embed those actions within Looker, very, very powerful tool. So I'd like to show you one more feature of embedding that we haven't really touched upon yet. And that's going to be within our saved reports. So we also provide the ability to provide self-service data exploration within an application. And Adam reserves this for its most premium users, right? So if I wanted to do this, clicking Explorer, got to upgrade to the premium version. So that's what we're going to do. So Looker's self-service exploration screen allows users to explore the data without having to know SQL because of the relationships have been modeled in LookML already. So they can self-serve from tens of thousands of possible queries. And so this takes the custom request off of Adam's customers, the analytical team's load, right? So now that we're permissioned to do so, let's go into the Explorer. And let's clear this screen. All right. So let's say we want to do some data exploration for ourselves. So we can start off with some identifiable information. Start off with email. All right. Let's see how much they've spent. Total sale price here. And let's narrow down the demographic. Again, we'll use aged here. Aged here. Where are you at? You're right there. And actually, let's filter on this so that we're able to narrow this down by a particular demographic. Let's do 2029. So I'd also like to filter from high-value customers. So I'd like to do this by filtering over here by our total sales price, adding a filter, and only looking at those customers that have spent over $200. So we've done that, and we run the query. So, and just with that, without having to write any type of SQL, thank you. Is greater than, we want is greater than. That's right. Guess no one spent exactly $200. So without writing any SQL at all, we're able to have these results for us. So again, if we wanted to, we can show and hide the SQL that's produced if we'd like that. The real value here, though, allows me so that I can send this information to my company, to my team, and make this available on the Save Report screen, right? But we can also, if we want to, just like before, send this information in multiple types of format. Excuse me, either as a webhook to an S3 bucket, Google Cloud bucket, multiple types of formats, CSV, text, and so forth. So this kind of gives us an idea of what it's like to basically externalize Looker within your own application and allowing people to play with their own data that you make externalized. So now what I'd like to show you is something that we're working on in terms of trying to incorporate our GenAI products within Looker. And before I do so, just to make sure that things are not, because I actually need to log in, I'm actually just going to disconnect this real quick. So it's going to be doing the demo. And then I'm going to log in to my account. Who here has actually used Looker before? Nice, nice. How many people here are Tableau users? How many people here are Power BI users? It's a fairly even room. I used to use a lot of Tableau when I worked at 66 Degrees. Well, before 66 Degrees, I was at Pandora Systems, and then they had a merger together.
We only use Looker.
Only use Looker. It's true. That's why they're here. No. Okay, so today, this is really to illustrate what it looks like when GenAI, analytics, and other AI tools work together in a cohesive manner. And this live demo provides a practical application of GenAI technology with an analytical context packaged into a control center for a modern-day smart home. So the Google team used a lot of products here, including Vertex AI, our PaLM API, GenApp Builder, PubSub, BigQuery, and of course, the Looker API. So we didn't mean to build this because Looker's expanding in the smart home business, but instead we want to really show our manufacturing, retail, utilities, fulfillment centers, and other customers, how we can use GenAI as an operating system for facilities and sensor data. And as a bonus, the GenAI designed all the images that you're seeing, and with Vertex's future partnership with Adobe Firefly, Google will soon bring easy type of the image generation to all of our customers. So let's dive in. All right, okay, cool. It looks good here. All right, so what we're looking at, on the left-hand side, we have a web app with visual and interactive analytics on the 4 key aspects of our smart home. So this includes our electric car. This includes our solar panel array. This also includes our garden, which shows us our power consumption, our water usage, and our pool does the same. Okay, so this is also augmented with data from BQ public data sets and also Google Maps to really help contextualize what's going on in the home. So you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, power usage that's coming in from our smart home, also electricity data that's coming in from our utilities company that's also being provided through CSV files. So you can think of that being stored in like an S3 bucket or a Google Cloud storage and so forth. And on the right-hand side, we've got access to GIA. So GIA is our GenAI type of the operating system for the smart home. And GIA can help us really understand the data and make better sense on sustainability. So both sides are contextually aware, meaning when I click on an icon, so if I click garage, the app will actually prompt suggestions in the chat window. And some actions within chat will actually impact the layout of the app itself. So again, if I click here on the garage, GIA is going to recommend me a context-aware prompt. So let's ask GIA, when will my car be charged? Right now it's at 60%. So GIA comes back, your car will fully be charged in 4 hours and gives us the charge rate and shows us the math that's involved with that. But I can also ask GIA, because GIA is fed with data from our smart home at this moment, can also provide us responses grounded in that data. But it's also a contextually aware LLM. We can also move outside of that pre-provided prompts and build upon our smart home data with public data available to the internet. So this power is just merging both analytics and GenAI together, right? So I can ask a question such as, on this level of charge, can I drive from Boston to Vermont? All right, yes, you can drive from Boston to Vermont on 60% charge. This distance between Boston and Vermont is 200 miles, yada, yada, yada. Very cool stuff. So also, as with before, I can click on the solar panel icon and it will prompt GIA to recommend context-aware selections for prompts. So I can ask it things such as, based on my data, how many more solar panels do I need to go off grid? Right, so based on the CSV provided, your smart home's annual electricity usage is 200 watts. You currently have 1,500 kilowatts of solar power installed, which means you need an additional 500 kilowatts of solar panel. But I can also ask, recommend 3 commercial options of solar panels for me. All right. So what it's doing now, it's actually searched the public type of the internet to give me different types of panels in terms of price, power wattage, and so forth. So if I wanted to see what that was like to interact with the dashboard to the left, let's say I wanted to add an LG solar panel, you'll see here that LG was added, and now we're actually 93% solar, and we're actually 7% power grid. Let's say we wanted to add a Rec Alpha solar panel. Now we're 100% off the grid. I can also ask things such as, compare my monthly power consumption and average for my average home in JSON. And I'll actually explain why we're saying in JSON in a bit. So with structured prompts, I can really go beyond the conventional chatbot reply and have Jira respond within a predictable format that allows me to anticipate how that data will be returned reliably and take action on that. And if I'm permissioned to do so, which I am in this demo, I can actually bring this onto my dashboard, save that out, send this, have this externally facing like before, and so forth. So some additional facts. There's also a showing you the being able to interact with the dashboard. We really have this floor panel view so that this can be seen for customers who are very involved in manufacturing, like a manufacturing floor, retail space, and so forth. Being able to interact with the room from a dashboard, turn lights on, off, changing the actual temperature of the room, having that effect live from a dashboard. So this is really powerful stuff. And more of this will actually be portrayed at Next. This is really just a sample of really what we're working with. And to kind of give you an idea of really how this is being made, a lot of this information is taken from sensory data from Nest cams, thermostat, some other sensors, solar panel information that's being provided to us through a CSV format, information from the public internet. All of that is being housed within BigQuery in a structured format and then being presented with GenAI Builder and our Looker API. And just to kind of give you a taste and show you the responses that we were giving it, you can see here that the info bot itself is reading those CSV files with our POM API and interacting with BigQuery where all the structured information is, along with the unstructured files within the Google Cloud bucket, and also giving us a response in that JSON format. So that's actually what I had to show you today. And this is really, really interesting stuff. There's going to be a lot of other announcements at Next at the end of this month, so keep an eye out for that. So without further ado, I'm going to allow Emily to take the stage, and looking forward to see what Wayfair has to present. Thank you.
All right, what is my clicker?
So this is the clicker, and all I have to do is forward and then back.
Okay,
Cool.
Hi, everybody. Excited to talk to you a little bit about Wayfair's journey over the last 4 years. So we'll just hop right into it. Okay, I know this is being recorded, so I'm going to try really hard not to swear. All right. Sweet, you guys laughed at my joke. Okay. So just real quick what we're going over. Introductions, Wayfair's data transformation, and then kind of what is next for our journey. So if you guys don't know what Wayfair is, we are a market leader in the home goods vertical. And so really, though, how we identify is that we are a technology company that is building a platform to service a $8 billion industry. So Wayfair has offices all over North America, in Europe, in India, and we are growing. Earnings call was today. Very exciting stuff. So you can definitely read the rest of the slides, but I'm going to kind of skip through this. So me again, I'm Emily Pearson. I'm the Associate Director of Data Infrastructure and Data Enablement at Wayfair. My job is specifically to build out all of our tooling that supports the data journey at Wayfair. So from the time the data is created at the application layer and transformed by data engineers and then ultimately used to make business decisions with BI tools, my team owns that journey. So we are very much involved here. I've been at Wayfair for 5 years. I have some credentials there. My team likes this. I identify as an analyst, even though I'm in the product org, because at my core, I am an analyst. And I like some things, so always happy to talk about that. All right, but like what you're actually here to see. So to talk about our transformation, we have to talk about where we came from. So I like to refer to 2018 as the dark ages. So where we were at that time. Our analytics environment was on-prem. Microsoft SQL Server, Vertica, Hive, Hadoop, MemSQL, you name it, we had it, and it was on-prem in our data warehouse. We had our main BI tools were Tableau Server, which was our perpetual server that we owned, that we bought like 5 years before this and didn't grow. And then we were really into SSAS cubes because it was 1998, apparently, and our Excel spreadsheets. So we also had some like random like specklings of Power BI that I didn't know about until too late. But in case you guys can't tell, we had a lot of pain points here. So most notably, we were growing beyond capacity. So we were fully on-prem, which meant scaling was slow and expensive because we had to get the hardware, we had to install the hardware, and then we had to make sure that everything worked. And by the time we scaled up our servers, we were already behind again. So we also had a big problem here with replicated data. So Vertica was a great example. We had 4 different Vertica servers where we were duplicating data across those servers because we needed it in multiple places. And in one server, it might be really slow. So you just hop over from ad hoc Vertica to marketing Vertica, and you have the same data. So we actually averaged, we did the math, 19 versions of tables across all of our data. So big problem, right? Some of these versions were like 3,000. Getting back to Tableau, creator licenses. So we were extremely limited on who could build dashboards. And so that meant that all these teams that wanted to work more autonomously, they couldn't because these were expensive licenses. Our dashboards were slow because our server was way too small. I think we were about 5x over recommended capacity. And we didn't have any way to really collaborate because when you have an SSAS cube run through Microsoft Excel, it is on your personal laptop and you have to make a copy of it to share it and people can't work together. So a lot of pain. So we sat down and talked about what we needed. So the words scalable, performant, and flexible are things that my team has heard me say 1,000 times over the last couple of years because that is what we're trying to do, right? We want to scale because we didn't. We want things to be flexible, and obviously we need them to be performant. So as mentioned, referring back to the pain points, highly collaborative tools. We didn't have that, and we needed it. We needed ways that we could work the way that we were working in Google Workspace with a doc where multiple people could contribute and everyone could see it and there was version control, things like that. And ultimately, as we continued to grow, we needed a way to ingrain data governance that, to help our users trust their data. So what makes Wayfair unique? So taking a little step back here. Okay, so first things first. Large and diverse data community. So we don't use user personas. We have a data maturity spectrum because we can't bucket our users into a perfect analyst role or customer service role or whatever. Our users are vast. We're talking about 23,000 full-time employees and 20,000 of them access our data products. So, they can be everyone from a customer service agent who is looking to check their metrics, or they can be a data scientist who is building out an advanced model to drive personalization on the Wayfair website. We have a federated business intelligence organization, so we don't have central BI. All of our business intelligence functions exist within the business domains. So we don't have a central group that is managing all of our data. That exists within the domain teams. But because of that, infrastructure, our group, owns our BI platforms. So that's super fun. We are, the provisioners of these platforms. We are responsible for making sure that they are performant, but we don't own the data that exists behind them. So it requires a lot of really strong partnerships across our group, data engineering, analysts, et cetera, to make these things successful. And as of this week, we have 128 petabytes of data that is floating around. So everything that Wayfair does has data. We are obviously a big, major website, but we also own our own supply chain and logistics network. We have all of our financials, we have our merchandising. Everything has data behind it, and this number continues to grow. All right, so getting into the actual transformations. I have a lovely little timeline down here, but this is kind of how we started back in 2019. So first things first, our enterprise data environment, lovingly known as Eden. It's a terrible name. But fun story time. So we recognized that we needed to make sure that our analytics data was completely separate from our data or from our servers that were running our website, because on Black Friday in 2018, too many queries took down our website. So we had to make sure that these things were completely separate and that teams could do their analytic work without being restricted. So we created this analytics environment in BigQuery. During this time, we also decided to launch some new BI tools. So we had done a lot of investigation with Looker. We had talked to a lot of our users about who would be interested in a POC, and we eventually rolled out a POC in Looker with one business domain. We also, at the same time, decided to launch on a whim Data Studio because we had a GCP contract, and Data Studio, which is now Looker Studio, was free. So we said, hey, why not? Let's check it out. During all this, we had to migrate all the data, all the users. It was a big, big effort. And so as you can see by our timeline here, we did all of this in parallel. So we didn't shut down one thing, launch another thing. We kept things running in parallel for a multitude of reasons. But the biggest ones were we relied heavily on early adopters to make sure that we knew what we were doing and the tools that we needed to build out to ensure that we could move data from these on-prem systems into BigQuery, that we could move these users from their lovely Tableau dashboards to Looker and Data Studio, et cetera. So it was really, really fun. We're in the process of shutting down the last of our legacy systems, and it's really exciting. All right, so Looker, because that's why we're here, right? We want to talk about Looker. So we launched Looker at the end of 2019. We specifically launched it in our B2B organization, and that is because we had an executive sponsor who was so pro-Looker, because they had used Looker at a previous company, that they sold everyone in their organization on using Looker. And so they committed, they went all in, and we stood up Looker with just one business domain. So there's a lot that obviously went into this, divided into kind of two different columns here: technical decisions, community decisions. So the technical decisions, first things first, we decided to be self-hosted because we were an infrastructure organization. We hosted our Tableau server, so we can host anything, right? Wrong. Our initial models were built with Vertica, and we immediately flipped to BigQuery. So that was also some fun learnings. And one of the big things for us, kind of going back to the need for data governance, is that we actually very much relied on a hub and spoke model. And so in the hub and spoke model, standardized dimensions and metrics like revenue are predefined in the hub, and the individual spokes can pull from them. So we don't have 10 different versions of the definition of revenue. That's just one of many. So the bigger thing here that I like to kind of call out for my group is the community decisions. So because we are a centralized infrastructure organization who doesn't actually own these models, you know, how are we going to make this successful? And so the first thing we did is we created this council of developers. And so we had different data engineering team members who were across all the organization that volunteered to help us architect our Looker environment and onboard other developers. So we would have this group get together, talk about all the things that we were trying to do, you know, share problems from merchandising to supply chain to finance, and really you know, create the vision for Looker on how all these models were going to work together. This also was like super helpful until we had, you know, a standard level of LookML knowledge in our data engineering organization. We really relied on this group for onboarding, code reviews, et cetera. We white-gloved everything. So there is somebody on my team who for a year answered individually every single question across thousands of users that they had. Doesn't matter how petty it was. Doesn't matter if it was covered in the documentation. She went out there and answered it because we knew that we needed to make the user successful. And we also knew, too, based on Gartner and Forrester Magic Quadrant reports, that one of the biggest downfalls with Looker was the barrier to entry for new users who are not technical users, because it's different than Tableau, it's different than Power BI. And once you get it, it's great. But to actually get there, it takes a lot of work. And so we wanted to make sure that we could do whatever we could to reach critical mass where knowledge across teams became, you know, very, very easy and accessible versus, you know, I'm the only person on my team that's using this tool and I have a question and nobody can answer it. And the last thing here, we gatekept a lot. So when we first launched Looker, we were looking at our metrics and we realized that people weren't really using the tool. And we wanted to know, why aren't you using the tool? And the feedback that we got from our users was, I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to use the tool. And a lot of these problems kept coming up, and we realized that we need to have mandatory training on the platform until, again, we hit that critical mass where it becomes ingrained information or ingrained knowledge within the teams. And so we actually implemented required training and then a quiz. People hated the quiz, but what we found was that users who went through the training, 65% of them used Looker every single week to do their jobs, versus users who did not go through the training, only about 20% of them did. So we definitely saw results there. And it was not a popular decision, but it really did help set our community up for success. Okay, so where we are today. Looker is an enterprise tool. So big thing, we moved from self-hosted to Looker hosted. And the reason being is that at one point in the first year, we had a SEV that our data warehouse team could not figure out what was going on. They had to download logs, send them over to Looker. Looker had to review the logs, send back some ideas. They would test those ideas. And then we basically went back and forth for about a week until we realized there was a network configuration error on our side that we couldn't decide. And at that point, we said, you know what? This is only 1,000 users. When we're at 5,000, 10,000 users, this is not going to be acceptable. And so we switched our focus to having Looker be hosted by Looker, that then became Google. This has been a phenomenal decision for us because now we can just partner with the Google team and talk about what is coming. You know, are we launching a new model? Are we bringing in like a new user community? What should we expect in terms of scaling? And we can prep for that appropriately, and it's taken care of for us instantaneously. So that was a really good move. All right, open access. So our training, our quiz, we dropped it eventually. It took about 1.5 years, and we finally let go of it. But we realized at that point, critical mass, we were good. Teams could really onboard themselves, and we'd be all set. You know, so then some other things that are very, very recent are the Looker connectors that are coming out. So we rolled out connected sheets a few months ago. We rolled out the Looker Studio connector probably about a month ago, and we're seeing some interesting adoption there. So I mentioned Looker Studio, Data Studio at the beginning. So the thing to note about Looker Studio is that it is our most popular BI tool. We have 20,000 users in the last 12 months because it is so easy to use, and we love that. But it connects mostly to BigQuery, which we don't totally love because it's not curated BigQuery, it's random BigQuery. And so, you know, we're trying to create this balance between governed data and, you know, being able to be self-serving your analytics. So while we love that everyone's using it, we don't totally love that they're not using modeled data. So we're really excited about the Looker Studio connector. All right, so what is on the horizon? I like to always take a step back. So first things first, our tooling philosophy. So big thing, in case you can't tell by the data here with the number of tools that we have in play over the last couple of years, we don't believe that there's one perfect BI tool. So a big thing that we realized with some of the changes that we had made over the years was that trying to force users into a tool that they weren't comfortable with was not going to work for us. Some people prefer spreadsheets. Some people prefer visualization. Some people prefer to write their own queries. Like, everyone has a place where they work most efficiently, and we want to do what we can to support that. A BI tool can't fix bad data. Like, duh. But so many leaders I have talked to over the years have been like, well, if we just bring in Tableau again, like, and we do it better, it will make everything better. And that's not the case, because the tool itself is not going to fix the data. You have to make sure that you have good processes behind the data so that you can actually use the tool effectively. And so we definitely try to push for our users to kind of decouple the idea in their minds of the tool itself versus the data itself. And that, again, leans back to the strong partnerships I mentioned with our data engineering teams, et cetera. So model curated data leads to higher data confidence. So we love data ourselves. So I mentioned that Wayfair, 20,000 people are accessing data. We are not exempt from that. We also are using a ton of data. So one of the things that we love about Looker and really just like GCP in general is the amount of metadata that we can have around usage, and we can analyze those usage patterns. We supplement that with a lot of user interviews and a bi-yearly user survey where we ask people from an NPS perspective how they feel about the tools that we're offering them. And so one of the questions that we ask, which is an agreeable question of, I am confident in the data that is available to me. And so what we have found is that users who have access to modeled data tend to have higher data confidence. And so we're trying to really, continue to lean in on improving our data confidence scores, because we think that that's really what's going to drive people to be more efficient, because if you don't have to question the validity of the data, you can just use it and you can move on and do great things. Highly performant data is the standard. So at one point, years ago, when I was younger and naive, I tried to put together an objective and key result around having performance targets for Looker. And that was immediately shot down, because my director at the time said, you can't set a goal for performant data. That should be standard. That should be business, BAU. And so we really try to adhere to that, because not only is that best practices, but we are growing. Our data is growing. If we say, hey, we're going to hit a target and then we don't have to worry about it anymore, we'll blow past that, because we're constantly growing our data. So what comes next for us? So what I'm showing you here is our plans for our unified analytics platform. So getting back to some of our philosophies and principles, really our goal is to create confidence in data for users where they want to be. And so we have been in this state of, we have a lot of one-to-one relationship between the data source and the tools. We have some model data, some curated data. At this point, we're evolved past cubes, but at one point, there was a whole nother line that was taking data from cubes to Excel. And really, we want to be able to provide users with the tool that they want to use, but accessing the same data sources. And so we're looking at Looker to be that middle layer for us on how we want to be able to access everything. So the launch of the connectors, super critical for us in terms of ultimately achieving this. All right, how are we going to get to the UAP, as we call it? So we've launched the connectors. It's exciting. What comes next with those? So we definitely want to enhance the capabilities of the connectors. And that's a big partnership that we have with Google right now, is talking about what kind of features do we need to increase adoption here. I like to refer to Wayfair as Google's QA, because we really QA a lot of their stuff for them. But it also gives us an opportunity to provide feedback, because we are constantly early adopters. And so, making sure that some of these key features are delivered, I think is really going to help with the adoption of these other tools. So scaling our Looker platform. So we have been told that our Looker instance is the largest single instance that exists out there. We are maxed out. And we need to figure out what is the next step for Looker itself. And so really what this means is we need to break down the monolith Looker platform or Looker instance that we have now and start rolling out domain instances. There's a lot of pros here, right? You can, divide up resourcing. You can decrease blast radius for teams that are, maybe don't make the best decision. You give teams autonomy on how they're going to run things, and you can ultimately increase your funnel of queries that are running into Looker. The cons, disjointed user experience, and this is what we had with our Tableau server. So we ended up dividing up our old Tableau server into having one for our supply chain, one that was our production one that was for talent. And you could not cross over instances. And so the thing that we want to make sure that we're providing for our users is the ability to access data outside their domains. So if you're a merch analyst, you're going to want to access data outside of merch. You want to access supply chain data and finance data, and we want to make sure that that is available in this kind of new generation of our Looker platform. Last thing here, integrations with data catalog, because what is the point of doing all this if nobody can find the data? So big problem, I think everyone has this problem, is that how do you actually make sure that users are accessing the right data assets? We right now have 850,000 tables in our analytics environment, and that's a lot of tables for people to sift through. And so our goal is to really start decreasing the public view of these, and we know that we're going to be able to do this through promoting the quality of the right assets and taking all of this great metadata that we have gained over the years and being able to use that to populate directional guidance for our users so that they are, confident in their data. There's a theme there. All right, that's it. Anything else?
Well done. So we're going to take a 5-10 minute break, and then we're going to set up some chairs for our fireside chat. So please come back in about 10 minutes. We'll call it 10 minutes. Please come back in 10 minutes.
All right.
Well done. Good job.
Thanks.
So everybody, I'm going to just do it again. Let's give the speakers another round of applause. That was amazing. Chris, you waited until the very end to dazzle us with that amazing demo. That was great. And thank you for sharing. I think your team's here. I heard some.
There's some of them. Some of them left halfway through.
But
they were like, we've heard this.
Thank you for opening up the kimono and letting us see really what's happening, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That was fantastic. We also have JP with us up here on our panel. She's with 66. JP, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm JP. I'm a senior analytics team lead with 66 Degrees, and I geek out on Looker on a day-to-day basis, basically. It's interesting because I was listening to both of them, and that's my day-to-day is bridging the gap between these business needs that they have no idea how to execute, and then you've got the technical people who have no idea how to find out what they need on that side, and me being like the glue to be like, let's be the mediator here, like I'll be the translator, we'll bring everything together, and I feel like I'm glue sometimes.
No, that's great. That's great. You are the glue, right? The customer on one side, Google technology on the other, and then we bring that glue in the middle. So does anybody have any questions? Any burning questions? It's okay.
And you guys are still here.
Sure, right here.
So I'm kind of curious, based on how many tables were mentioned before. Like you mentioned a data catalog, and that's well and great. But how do you keep track of like the maturity of your data, where it's going, who has access to that kind of stuff? Like I'm sure, especially when it's decentralized, you want to kind of know who's looking at what. But how do you begin to think about that problem?
Yeah, so that's definitely for me, right? Yeah, 850,000 tables. So our biggest thing is that we're using the data catalog, and we've identified different data quality labeling that we want to apply to these assets that we're standardizing across Wayfair. And so really, a asset to be listed as public moving forward has to hit 5 different labels. And so it has to be, there has to be ownership around it, so we have to be able to trace it back to a team. There has to be a flag on whether or not it should or shouldn't be public. There's one around curated. Unfortunately, Vinit left. He could come up here and talk a whole lot about this. But our goal is to just decrease that number till we get down to a number that is more appropriate for what should be serviced in the data catalog. Like, so we don't want users to search over 850,000 tables. We want users to search over 100,000 tables, which is still too many, but like it's an improvement, and get to a place where we can then supplement with the metadata surrounding the table, the assets themselves with usage data, which we definitely are deriving a lot from the BigQuery like information schema and all the logs that exist out there. And then cloud asset inventory is another one that we're really investing in so that we can kind of marry all of that data together so that when a user who is uninformed searches and says, I want to know what revenue I should be using, what revenue dashboards are out there, what is being populated to them has been approved from a data engineering perspective, is a highly used asset. So like we want to kind of use data catalog as a tool to really bring all that together. It's a fun process.
Good question.
Is there a workflow there? So if someone sees some data that they want, they automatically get access, or is there a process where they have to kind of request approval if it's PII or one of those things?
So we have, in our analytics environment, we have restricted data sets, and then we have unrestricted data sets. And so basically anything that should be restricted is, and that is limited. So if a data asset has information such as PII, it's usually not readily available. We do utilize a lot of like row-level security controls for some of the more sensitive for some of the more sensitive data assets, but the majority of our data is in the unrestricted data sets because we want to make sure that we can surface as much as possible.
What would you like to see from a GenAI standpoint folded into Looker as a platform?
Interesting question.
Is that for me, Teak?
No. Something I
For Emily?
curious from a client standpoint what you'll do.
Are they even talking about Gen AI?
So like in my space, not necessarily because again, we're a platform team, but I know that there is a lot of interest from our data science organizations on how we can, use Gen AI to improve a lot of our offerings when it comes to how we're delivering on the Wayfair website. So definitely, I think some things that our different domain teams are interested in, but from a platform perspective, I'm just like, okay.
Chris, you obviously gave us a demo and showed us that integration of Looker and Gen AI. Are you seeing demand out there for people wanting this feature?
Definitely. I think it's kind of indirect demand because just, this is very new technology and, incorporating this technology within a dashboarding solution, I don't think a lot of people know about the capabilities and that can be built, in this, now, now that our GenApp Builder slowly being rolled out, our PaLM API has been around for a very long time, and Looker obviously has been around for a while now, but in terms of the art of the possible, I think that's just starting to come around, and the more that this is being aware and being shown to decision makers, non-decision makers, and even the general public, I think that creative nature of being like, wow, this is actually possible. I can interact with the dashboard, talking to an LLM model, and surface insights that I wasn't even contextually aware of. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Question.
So if I could extend the Gen AI question a little bit, I've been to other sessions at Google where I've learned the importance of thinking as two different spheres, basically, of like the consumer-facing products like ChatGPT and Bard versus the enterprise-oriented products like the GenApp Builder and so forth. And I'm trying to understand better how to connect data that's in a data warehouse or in a structured format to, like, let's say BigQuery, for example. How do I connect that to the large language models that may not be the foundation models that are out there, but it might be either a fine-tuned model that I enhance with my data, or it could be a custom trained model that I built from scratch, which would not be an LLM, but it would be a much smaller scale because I don't have $1 billion.
Right.
Clients don't have $1 billion, right? So I'm thinking of, I'm just trying to learn what the possibilities are for connecting the large language models to data that's in a curated warehouse. And I think this is very much an emerging field. I haven't seen much in this space so far. I know what I'm reading is that every BI vendor is working on this like crazy, and not very many people have people talking about it, but they don't have products, and they're not yet releasing the products because they don't have them.
Right.
And so the use cases I've seen are, yes, you can do PEFT, right, parameter efficient fine tuning. You can do that, but the data that you use for that PEFT training is coming from your documents on your intranet. They're not necessarily curated data that's in a data warehouse. So can you talk to me about, help me, give me the vision here that I'm struggling to find, and will that be through Looker, or will that be through other Vertex AI tools that are not Looker, or what? How does that work out?
Cool, and I'll do the best that I can to answer it.
And I know it's not changing by the day.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'm not super well versed in Vertex AI, but I think the answer to your question would be more along the lines of within Vertex AI there are, it's made available in terms of the open source models like Stable Diffusion and so forth, but there's other models such as the PaLM API and internal Google models that you can use. to kind of get the, you know, let me kind of backtrack a bit. So at the end of the day, it's all about the information of where the model's being trained, and if it's all about where it's being housed within your data warehouse. In terms of a BI tool, that BI tool is just going to read where that information is coming from and where that data is being housed. In terms of the Palm API and like your LLM models, that's going to be trained on the data wherever that sits, and if it's allotted to, the public internet as well. Obviously, there are restrictions on what you can train the model on. In terms of Google, I believe that there are models that are frozen and that are, you can't basically train them on your data. You can basically call them and utilize them with the model that are trained within Google, right? But from a BI perspective, in terms of Looker, and specific to that demo that we were Looker is reading the information that's within BigQuery, and when I'm talking to the information bot is querying the Palm API, which then creates the SQL query to talk to the data warehouse, which then does that reverse engineering to bring back that answer, right? Also, you know, that model is also permission to take data from the public internet as well. So when I'm asking it how long on that charge of data, the data that we know that is within the BigQuery data set, how long is it going to take me to drive from Boston to Vermont? We already know that's public information, how the distance between Boston and Vermont, right? And comparing that to the structured table within BigQuery, it's allowed to do that, right? So there wasn't really any additional training there because the model was already trained. And Looker is just taking that information and kind of presenting it in a beautiful UI format. I hope that kind of answered your question. I know it is changing by the day. Nice.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, Chris, when you were showing your demo that you were asking the AI to make correlations between my data and the outside internet connection.
Right.
But you weren't letting it actually communicate with the database and opening up a big security risk, right?
Right.
So that's interesting. The baby steps are, hey, can I get some correlation between what's really important to me with outside data, but without Ghostbuster crossing the streams, so to speak, right?
Right, right.
Something that I've also kind of been seeing lately is the fact that there's a lot of interest out there for someone to just type in something and have an entire dashboard be created from that. So not just, what is this going to be and have Looker show you the best visualization. It's give me insights across the entire query that I'm interested in insight. And so I think the end goal is to eventually get there as well, because you've got designers or technical people creating dashboards that are just report tables, and they don't necessarily understand the UX perspective, the UX UI perspective of how end users who are not technical read and interact with that stuff. And so I think what I've been interested in, at least, is seeing that end goal come together, is the visualization entirely built out as well, beyond just the actual data at the end of it.
So does that work, what you described?
I mean,
There's Ask Looker.
yeah, there's Ask Looker, and then there's in Looker Studio, they also have something that they're working on, I think, where you can type something in and it suggests to you what to look at exactly, like what to bring together. That's one thing. And then I think the second piece is for the models to start understanding, okay, if it's this type of data or insight, what's the best visualization to use? And then to curate all of those together. I think it's mixing together a lot of different types of ML models and AI.
Anybody else?
I have a question for Ms. Emily. She mentioned that you have this federated data system, and you also have a centralized group who basically oversees everything else. I'm an
Yeah, I would say that that's what our group is trying to do through tooling, very much specifically. So having a federated data engineering community does have its challenges because we don't have that centralized control. And so what we're trying to do is deliver tooling that helps create consistent data that is ultimately available for users across all the boards that they can be confident in. And so when you think about data that exists in different domains, bringing it into a centralized place, like we want all of the engineering teams to treat their data the same. So from the time it's created to how it streams into the different data warehouse and ultimately how it's transformed to use. And so our opinion is that we're trying to do that through tooling. And so by delivering a lot of these different things, and so I talked a lot about our BI experience, but we also have an in-house processing tool that we are running all of our data through. We have provisioning automated through things like Backstage. And so we're trying to just influence where we can via tooling. Sometimes we are successful and sometimes we are not, but ultimately we need to make sure that we have a mutually accountable system across the tools that we're offering and the data engineers that are populating this data.
One more. Oh, one more.
I already had one.
I'll take one.
Okay.
I want to pinpoint that a challenge for training the associate. Does that take like a partnership with the Google to train them? Because I think the hardest part is to train the associate to like the new product that just came out. So can you elaborate like what was that challenge on to?
Yeah, so for us, it was a twofold approach. So users need to be trained on the platform itself, how to use the tool, and then they need to be trained on the data that exists within the tool. And so a lot of our training was centered around what we owned was the platform itself. So with Looker, we utilized what Looker used to offer, and then I think we did something through Pluralsight and LinkedIn Learning, et cetera. Like we looked for courses that kind of just introduce a user to the Looker platform. The domains themselves own the actual onboarding and trading of the data itself. And so we rely a lot on those groups to make sure that whenever they're onboarding a new user, that after they've done the platform training, that they are then doing the data training so that they can be as successful as possible in that space. Now, do we have people that have a Google Doc with a query that they copy and paste and run all the time? Yes, that's super fun, which is why we want to get more towards the unified analytics platform.
Anybody have a burning question? Burning. Okay, last question.
Yeah, hello, my name is Alex, distinguished software engineer from Methods. My questions will be very technical, unfortunately. Yeah.
Try our best.
Previously, I didn't use Looker, but some years ago, maybe many years ago, I used Data Studio from Google. Yeah. And my first question will be about integration with different data sources. You mentioned that Looker is a UI for my database. What types of database do you support? Externally hosted databases, only cloud-based databases, similar like that. And the second question will be about the performance of the Looker. Does it mean that the system depends on the underlying database performance? Because you mentioned that queries are very complex, automatically generated by Looker. It means we have to create a lot of indexes for our database, or this can be somehow solved by Looker.
I can answer that question. So, in terms of connectors, there are a lot. Specifically for Looker Studio, there are I think 60 plus native connectors, and then there are a lot of third-party connectors for other non-popular databases as well.
You can build custom connectors.
You can build custom connectors as well. And so the platform itself and the program was made, and this kind of leads into your second question, the platform itself was made to not extract the data and for the platform to do itself. It was made to sit on top of a database to work with modern databases like a Snowflake or a BigQuery or Azure, and use these extremely powerful databases that can compute tons and tons of data, and utilize that as the power source, and then use Looker as the platform to visualize that. So back in wave 1, MicroStrategy or whatnot. Additionally, also in wave 2, there was this notion to extract that information in cubes and let the platform itself do the computing. Back then, we didn't have these humongously powerful databases that can compute beyond our imagination. Looker platform, Looker Studio were made to just be that visualization layer and let the hard work be done by the database. And so for your first question, I would recommend just to do a quick skim on the Looker website, particularly Data Studio, if you just want to get started. Lots of different native connectors. As Emily said, you can also make custom connectors as well. There's also a lot of third-party tools to assist you in that. So,
I also kind of want to add to that because performance has definitely been something that has been top of mind for us. And so one of the things I want to call out for us is that you do have the option of using PDTs in Looker. We don't particularly use PDTs for much outside of aggregate awareness, so building aggregates off of predefined models. We do a lot of our data transformations in our ETL layer, and that's where we do a lot of the hard work because we're relying on BigQuery to kind of take on that heavy lift. And so Looker for us is really about pulling everything together from a model perspective and then delivering it to the users. And so where we're at right now with our Looker journey is that, as I mentioned, we have a singular instance. The thing that I didn't get a chance to talk about was they only gave me half an hour and I needed like 3 hours, but was to talk about some of the things that we've done recently, which is originally we had a singular BigQuery connection. And so all of our volume was running through a single connection. And so anyone who uses BigQuery, you know that you have a limited number of connection threads per project, and when you hit that, you either get a concurrency error. If you're in Looker, you can go into queue. And so one of the big things that we've done is we've started breaking out to multiple connections so that we can, again, increase that funnel so we can run more queries concurrently without them sitting in queue. This has allowed us to actually resource independently from a centralized location. And so rather than having a singular BigQuery reservation with slots that's powering our Looker instance, all of our domain groups now have their own reservation that powers their Looker queries. And so we're able to actually have teams own their performance, specifically because they're building the models, they own the reservations. So as I mentioned in my presentation, we don't believe that a tool can fix bad data. And so really it comes back to the model itself. Like, how are you building out this model? Are you building it to achieve a singular visualization, or are you building it to scale that people can pivot off of? And so really having a lot of those data engineering best practices leading into Looker sets the platform up for success and allows it to be as performant as possible. I couldn't help myself.
No, that's great answer.
Thank you so much for that, yeah.
Thank you. It was very helpful.
Okay, all right, I'm getting the signal. It's a tiny, tiny question. We're over time.
Unified analytics platform flow, right? I get the Looker Studio, the sheets, and the Looker part running through LookML.
Mm-hmm.
What does the BigQuery running through LookML back to query look like? Are you scheduling LookML to output BigQuery as a table?
So ultimately, it's something that we're waiting on Google to deliver. So there's been a lot of talk about using LookML models as views in BigQuery and being able to query directly.
Perfect, thank you. I told you it was small.
Perfect. If you have another question, we're going to be in the reception until 8 o'clock. So please come and ask. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy evening. And speakers, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.